Hey, we are counting down the top 11 maps of the week, and we'll get to the chances of being born on each continent in 2026 in a minute. But starting us off, we have a map of where the Burqa is banned in the world. So this shows where it's banned. You have some places that you might expect, like France, which is obviously promotes secularism in their country, so they've kind of banned it in all public places. And then you have a few places that are a bit unexpected. You have Canada, which I believe there's some bans in certain areas in Quebec, and you have all sorts of other countries you can see here. And again, as always, I'll link to this map in the show notes. So the next map we have today is the maximum speed limits on European motorways and highways. You can see here the UK, where I'm based, is 70 miles an hour, which works out to 112 kilometers an hour. All of these are in kilometers per hour for any American or British listeners. And you can see here that famously Germany's autobahns have no sort of speed limits in place, whereas a lot of the rest of the continent is in the 120 to 130 range, which is actually faster than my home country of Canada, which generally has speed limits around 100 kilometers per hour. Moving on, we have a series of maps here about the densest neighborhood in every European country. So the densest neighborhood in all of Europe is in Barcelona, where you have 52,767 people in a square kilometer, which is kind of bonkers. You can see we have it for every country. So Paris has the next sort of densest area for France, and there's maps for each country here. You got Romania, and so on and so forth. So you can see where other countries come into the rankings. And this was made by Alistair Ray, who is a British cartographer who does some really interesting work. So I highly recommend taking a look at this. Here we are. We have a map of the 4 countries that start with the letter V, and I was just looking at this map here, and it's funny that 2 of them have kind of played a significant role, one in recent kind of American history and one in kind of mid-20th century American history. And you can come take a guess, maybe leave it a comment in the comment section about the countries and see if you can guess what they are, and then you can check your answers. Moving on, we have what Europe would look like if sea levels decreased by 1,000 meters. So we'd have the UK here would become really big. You could walk all the way from here to Iceland. We'd be attached directly to Ireland. You could also walk from the UK all the way down through France and Spain and into Africa. And we have Norway here, which has just kind of become massive by taking up a whole bunch of the sea. So again, there's kind of more of a description about it, but I really like this, the shape that it creates of Europe. So moving on, we have 1 flight and 2 map projections. So this is looking at a flight from Dubai to San Francisco. So here it is, the top of the world kind of picture. Fly close to the poles over Greenland and everything. And here's what it looks like on a more sort of standard flat map sort of thing, which looks a bit silly. So I think this is a really interesting way to visualize the world, again, in the same vein as looking at the world and the true sizes of countries versus the Mercator projection. Next, we have states with and without a Buc-ee's location. Now, if you're like me, you probably hadn't heard of Buc-ee's or probably have never heard of Buc-ee's. So Buc-ee's is a chain of like enormous gas stations, mostly in Texas, but a few other states, and it's got a real kind of cult following. And these stores are like absolutely enormous. I think the biggest one has about 120 gas pumps or petrol pumps, and their biggest retail location, is about 75,000 square feet. So to put that in some perspective, 75,000 square feet is bigger than an American football field, which is just under 60,000 square feet. So imagine that in just one store where you can buy all sorts of stuff. So people who love kind of Buc-ee's really love it a lot. So that's why this map was really popular. So coming back again this week, we have the cultural regions of Europe, but this is a humorous take on it. So it's what people think, or how people react, if you tell them that there are countries in Eastern Europe. Obviously, for countries in Western Europe, they'd be a bit confused. But countries that Western Europeans would consider Eastern Europe, like East Germany or the Czech Republic or Poland, sometimes they get offended by this, whereas people who are further to the east would respond positively to this. Now, I'm not Eastern European, so maybe if you are, you could maybe explain why this map is the case in the comment section below. Moving on, here's a map that I created that was looking at the kind of non-inflation adjusted house prices in 2000 versus 2026. So this doesn't account for how house prices have changed for just the nominal values at the time using Zillow data. So in the year 2000, not a single state in the United States had house prices above $200,000. I think the closest ones were Hawaii and California. But even though the average house price was still well below $200,000. And now, if you zoom forward to 2026, only 2 states actually have average house prices below 200K, and most other states have blown well past that. I have all the data here if you're interested, including inflation-adjusted home price increases, and how much prices have increased above inflation. And interestingly, if we go down here, only Louisiana is the only state where house prices have increased less than inflation. Even then, it's within about, I think, a percentage point of where it should be. In every other state, house prices have increased more rapidly than inflation in general, which I actually find quite surprising because some states have been losing people overall. All right, now getting on to our second last map of today is the chance of being born on each continent in 2026. So this is data that I collected, and it's based on the number of births that are happening in each country, not the share of global population right now. So as you can see here, the odds of being born in North America are really low, 3%, South America 7%, Europe, which they include Russia just for the sake of statistical analysis here, is only 4.8%. And you've got about a 50% chance of being born in Asia, most of that now coming in India with a kind of demographic kind of collapse or fertility rate collapse in China and Japan and other kind of countries there. And Africa coming in at just below 35%. Now, if you zoom forward down to the bottom here, you can see what the projections are for each continent in 2100. And you'll see here that I think the big story here is a lot of the other continents haven't really shifted very much, but Africa will become the dominant one with just over 48%, and Asia will actually have fewer births overall than Africa, which is a bit surprising. And our final kind of set of maps today is a set that I wrote many years ago, but it keeps coming up every so often. And it looks at what would happen if Germany had won World War II. So it looks at maps with kind of various fictional and historical scenarios. So this is showing here a map of kind of Germany in its maximum extent. And obviously looking at it, it looks kind of plausible that you think Germany could actually maybe have won the war. Obviously, this is in 1941, just as they recklessly declared war on the Americans, and obviously also invading the Soviet Union, which are 2 kind of disastrous decisions. So there's been a lot of kind of talk over the years. It's probably like the number one most talked about historic kind of what if. So it's featured in various things. So I have a few maps here that kind of look at the Man in the High Castle, which is maybe the most famous one here of what the world would have looked like if Nazi Germany had won the war, and Japan is along with it. And there's a map here too showing what the United States would have looked like in that sort of scenario in the book, which I highly recommend you read. It's a great book. The TV show, not so much. And then there's other ones here. Fatherland is another kind of classic book of the kind of genre, which kind of again looks at what would have happened. And I have a list of kind of other books that kind of talk about it here as well. I also go into, do I think there was any realistic possibility that the Germans could have won? And kind of spoiler alert, I think there's almost no chance that once they invaded the Soviet Union, I think it was all over for them. So you can read my reasoning on it on the post, which again I'll link in the show notes. Love to hear any comments about what people think, if I'm wrong or not. Obviously lots of people have left comments on the website as well, but please leave your comments on YouTube, and I'll be back next week with 11 more new maps. Thanks.